The House Appropriations Subcommittee on Licensing and Regulatory Affairs and Insurance and Financial Services will come to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Skaggs.
Here.
Representatives Brixey.
Yes.
Morse.
Here.
Martis.
Here.
McKinney.
Here.
Schutte. Here. Gordon.
Here.
And DeBoer. Mr. Chairman, the majority of members are present. We do have a quorum.
Representative Schutte moves to excuse all absent members without objection, so ordered. Representative Morse moves to approve the minutes from March 12th meeting without objection, so ordered. Welcome, subcommittee members and everyone in attendance. We will be once again, I believe, the first subcommittee to pass out budgets. In fact, we're so gung-ho, we'll be passing out. What? Second? You did it this morning, just now? That wasn't in the email. Unfortunately, we have someone has snuck ahead of us. Unbeknownst to most of the state. So this time we'll be second, which is still puts us in the front half, which is where we want to be. We'll have a presentation from the House Fiscal Agency that will be giving an overview of the bill. I'll be making some comments later on. I need a motion to adopt the H2 substitute for the DIFS budget. That is House Bill 5513. Representative Brixey makes the motion. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
On the motion to adopt the H2 substitute for House Bill 5513, Chair Skaggs.
Yes.
Representatives Brixey.
Yes.
Morse.
Yes.
Martis.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Schutte.
Yes.
Gordon.
Yes.
And DeBoer. Mr. Chairman, majority of members voting in the affirmative. Motion prevails.
We'll now hear from Marcus Coffin from the House Fiscal Agency to give an overview of the contents of HB 5513. Marcus, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. Before you, you have the House Fiscal Agency analysis for the H2 substitute for House Bill 5513. Drawing your attention first to the table at the top of the page, I'd like to point out the general fund for appropriation for this department totals $0. Gross funding appropriation under the chair's recommendation would total $77.8 million, which is the same as the executive's recommended amount. And the FTE count under the chair's recommendation stands at 401.5 FTEs. Going to the point-by-point analysis directly below that, item number 1, the staffing increase for 7 FTE positions and 1.3 million gross. The chair concurred with the executive on that item. Item number 2, including $660,000 of state restricted funding authorization for regulatory activities related to pharmacy benefit managers. The chair concurred with the executive on that item. Item number 3, the chair's recommendation concurred with the executive on including $250,000 of one-time state restricted funding authorization to support outreach campaigns related to consumer rights under the Patients' Right to Independent Review Act and the Insurance Code. On the reverse page, items 4 and 5. Item 4 is a technical adjustment that the chair concurred with the executive on, replacing federal authorization with state restricted authorization and making some other adjustments as well. And then item number 5, the economic adjustments, the chair concurred on that as well, 1.4 million gross. Looking at the major boilerplate changes, a couple items I would like to point out. So items 206 through 221 on page 3 are the general sections for the budget. By and large, the chair retained most of those sections. would like to point out item 214, the department information website. The chair concurred with the executive on deleting that item. And then on item 218, for stipulating that the legislature may intertransfer funds via concurrent resolution in the event of a state administrative board transfer, the chair concurred with the executive on deleting that item as well. On to page number 3, the 300 sections, which are more department-specific boilerplate. Couple items that I would like to point out. Items 302 and 303, the executive had proposed removing a $1 million appropriation limit that was placed on those two appropriations. The chair's recommendation concurred on removing those items. And then on item 305, the executive had deleted that language related to marijuana evaluation guidance, which is supposed to get distributed to state financial institutions that provide financial services to businesses operating within the marijuana sector. The executive had deleted that, and the chair's recommendation retained that. That, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions that might come up.
Do members have any questions? Seeing no questions and seeing no amendments, Representative Martis moves to report the House substitute for HB 5513, H2, out of the House subcommittee and refer it to the House Standing Committee on Appropriations with the recommendation that it pass. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
On the motion to report the House substitute H2 for House Bill 5513 and report it to the House Standing Committee on Appropriations with recommendation that it pass. Chair Skaggs.
Yes.
Representatives Brixey.
Yes.
Morse.
Yes.
Martis.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Schutte.
Pass.
Orton.
Pass.
And DeBoer. Mr. Chairman, 5 members voted in the affirmative. The motion prevails.
So we will now move on to the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. I need a motion to adopt the H1 substitute for House Bill 5514 on the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. Motion by Rep. McKinney. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
On the motion to adopt the House substitute H1 for House Bill 5514, Chair Skaggs.
Yes.
Representatives Brixey.
Yes.
Morse.
Yes.
Martis.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Schutte.
Yes.
Orton.
Yes.
And DeBoer. Chairman, majority of members voted in the affirmative. Motion prevails.
And once again, with Laura, we will hear from Marcus Coffin from the House Fiscal Agency to give an overview of the contents of the chair's recommended House budget with House Bill 5514 H1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As with the DIF's budget, you should have the House Fiscal Agency analysis that I distributed. Turning to the table at the top of the page, again, a couple items I would like to point out. The general fund under the chair's recommended budget totals $300.8 million. Total gross funding under the chair's recommendation would total $636.5 million, and the FTE total under the chair's recommendation would total 1,816 FTEs. Looking at the analysis item by item that follows, item number 1, the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission grants line item. The chair concurred with the executive on including an additional $37.4 million of general fund for that item, which would bring total funding for the Michigan Indigent Defense grants in fiscal year 25 to $258.3 million. Item number 2, the chair concurred with the executive on removing funding and FTEs associated with Executive Order 2023-6, which transferred child care licensing functions and other camps licensing functions to the Department of Lifelong Education, Advancement, and Potential. On page 2, item number 3, the chair concurred with the executive on including the chair concurred with the executive on removing funding related to renewable energy and electrification infrastructure enhancement and development grants that were included in fiscal year 24, but the chair's recommendation does include $500,000 of general fund in one-time funding for fiscal year 25 grants. Furthermore, the chair's recommendation includes boilerplate authorization, which is under section 1004 in the bill, which directs the department to expend up to $5 million of unexpended MIDC work project funds for the Renewable Energy and Electrification Infrastructure Enhancement and Development Program. So, long story short, total funding for that program under the chair's recommendation between the one-time piece and the boilerplate piece would total $5.5 million. Item number 4, the chair concurred with the executive on including an additional $5.8 million of restricted funding authorization and 31 FTEs for the department's responsibilities related to the clean energy package of 2023. On item number 5, the executive had removed the full $5.5 million fiscal year 24 one-time appropriation that was included for Michigan Saves. The chair's recommendation retained $5 million for that item in fiscal year 25. So Michigan Saves under the chair's recommendation would total $5 million. Item number 6, the executive had included $4.4 million of state restricted funding authorization from elevator fees and authorization for 10 FTE positions for the department to hire additional elevator inspectors. The chair's recommendation would cut both of those appropriations in half, allocating $2.2 million of state restricted funding authorization and 5 FTEs for that purpose. On page number 3, item number 7, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency, the executive had included a $3.4 million increase of state restricted funding authorization from various marijuana funds and 9 FTEs to hire additional CRA staff and to support statewide marijuana monitoring system fees. The chair's recommendation includes the portion of that increase associated with the staffing increase, but the chair's recommendation does not include the funding for the statewide marijuana monitoring system fees. Items 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 were all items where the chair concurred with the executive on those items. I'll skip going into those in detail, but I'd be happy to address any questions that might come up with respect to those items. So that takes us to page number 4. Couple items here I'd like to draw your attention to. Item number 14, the Public Service Commission 5-year Energy Waste Reduction and Demand Response Study. The executive included $1 million of state restricted funding authorization for that study. However, the executive's recommendation had categorized that funding as ongoing. The chair included that funding, but designated that as a one-time item. On item 15, the executive included $800,000 in general fund to support the Qualified Interpreter Program for ASL interpreters. The chair's recommendation does not include that funding. Other items on that page, again, mostly concurrences, so I won't belabor those points. Takes us to page number 5. A couple items here as well that I'd like to point out. Item number 21, the Bureau of Fire Services smoke detectors item. There was $1 million of general fund included in the current year budget for that item. The executive removed all of that funding for fiscal year 25. The chair's recommendation retains $250,000 of general fund for that purpose. Item 23, MIDC limited term staff. The chair's recommendation includes $250,000 of one-time GF and authorization for 2 FTEs to allow the MIDC to hire limited term staff or to contract with an external vendor to conduct additional financial examinations into how MIDC grant awards are utilized by award recipients. Item number 26 on the technical adjustments. Quite a few things fall within that category. Numerous fund balancing type adjustments are made there. And the executive had also included a consolidation of line items that support the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. The chair's recommendation concurs with most of the technical adjustments, but does not include the consolidation of the Michigan Liquor Control Commission lines. Instead, the chair's recommendation retains those as 2 separate line items. Additionally, the chair's recommendation replaces $1 million of general fund authorization with state restricted funding authorization from the Health Professions Regulatory Fund for a net zero adjustment. Items 27 and 28 on the reverse page are for the removal of other fiscal year 24 one-time appropriations, which the chair's recommendation concurred with the executive on. That totals $10 million gross, $3.6 million of general fund. And lastly, item 28, the chair concurred with the executive on economic adjustments totaling $6.4 million gross, $930,500 general fund. Moving on to the boilerplate changes. Again, as was the case with diffs, the 200 sections are primarily general sections, so I won't go too far into those. A couple items I would like to highlight, however, beginning on page 7, sections 222 and 223 regarding private grant-funded projects, and then informational training and special events, revenue and expenditures. The executive for both of those items had proposed eliminating appropriation caps on those items. The chair's recommendation retained the appropriation caps at a level of $4 million and $1 million respectively. Item 302 is language that was included in the current year budget requiring the Public Service Commission to conduct at least one public hearing in each of the 4 judicial districts described under Section 302 of the Revised Judicature Act. The executive had deleted that language. The chair's recommendation retained that language as it is in current law. Item 401, the investigation of direct shipments of wine report. The executive had proposed deleting language prioritizing enforcement on unlicensed out-of-state retailers and third-party marketers that illegally ship wine into Michigan, and had also deleted various reporting language. The chair's recommendation retains that section as it is in current law with minor stylistic variations. Section 604 is new language around the Cannabis Regulatory Agency metric system, so the statewide marijuana tracking system. As I mentioned, that was new language included by the chair's recommendation that would prohibit CRA appropriations from being used to offset user fees that are assessed for accessing and utilizing that system. On page 8, item 802, the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission report on incremental costs. The executive had deleted that report in her recommendation and that report pertains to the incremental costs associated with the standard development process and other processes in place at the MIDC. The chair's recommendation retained that language. On the 1,000 sections, which all pertain to one-time appropriations, Section 1001, the chair's recommendation retained language associated with the Bureau of Fire Services smoke detectors item. And then on Section 1002, the chair's recommendation deletes current year language associated with the Cannabis Regulatory Agency Social Equity Program, since funding was also removed for that program. However, the chair's recommendation includes a new Section 1002 pertaining to the MIDC limited term employees, stipulating how that money is supposed to be expended, as well as requiring reporting on the expenditure of those funds. Section 1003 on the Michigan Saves appropriation use. The chair revised that language to reflect the new appropriation amount of $5 million for that grant. The chair's recommendation also would allow for those funds to be utilized for on-site wastewater system replacements or repairs. Section 1004 is the reappropriation of the unexpended work project appropriations, again directing the department to expend $5 million of unexpended MIDC work projects on the renewable energy electrification infrastructure enhancement and development item. Lastly, Section 1005, which is language associated with the renewable energy and electrification infrastructure enhancement and development program. The chair made several revisions there. A couple of them were technical. However, the chair reduced the amount that the Public Service Commission can expend on those grants to $125,000. That's $500,000 in current law. And the chair's recommendation would also update definitions to allow that funding to be utilized on fast charging infrastructure upgrades on publicly owned land within 1,000 feet of a U.S. highway or state trunk line roadway, and also to allow renewable natural gas to be utilized for septage feedstock projects. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to address any remaining questions.
Members, any questions for Marcus? I just want to add a couple of comments of my own at the risk of being repetitive, which I will be. Wanted to just highlight a few of the issues which I think call the most attention to, and which I think we can be the most pleased with. That is we have seen the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission through all of its standards, and should be extremely proud that we have supported this program, which, as we saw in testimony from the commission, is doing incredible work at making sure that every Michigander has the opportunity, the real opportunity, to have justice within our justice system. At the same time, I think we owe it to the taxpayers to ensure that that the commission and the grants are being utilized in the correct manner and in which they are legally obligated. And so we wanted to make sure that the commission had extra funding to make sure that they're doing all the requisite and proper oversight of those grants to ensure that that the money is going to the stated purpose, to make sure that people get justice within our system. Also, extremely excited to state that we were able to get money for the Michigan Saves Green Bank back into the budget. They clearly have an extraordinary ROI in supporting residents, commercial businesses, etc., to implement energy savings programs. This can be as simple as we know, as a furnace or an air conditioner, or increased insulation, new windows, within a loan system, to make sure that we continue to be using energy in Michigan in the most efficient way possible. So excited that we were able to keep that going. Also excited that while we had to tick it down a bit, we were able to continue the program with our local fire departments around distribution of smoke detectors. I wanted to highlight that we've already seen that have the goal that we all supported, that these smoke detectors would be distributed and would help save lives. And we had a story come out just a couple of months ago that someone's life was saved by a smoke detector, which had only recently been installed in their home through this program. So something we should all be proud of. And then lastly, very excited to continue the work that we continued on last time from previous budgets around the renewable energy, electrification, infrastructure enhancement and development grants. If you remember, I think the number was something like $172 million in grant applications for the approximate $20 million that we were able to allocate. So we unfortunately do have to tick that down in these times, but we're able to keep the program going and hopefully have it be sustainable, because that is a program that clearly there is a need for, to support our local governments and nonprofits and businesses as they transition to a new economy. So with that, we have two amendments. Representative Schutte has designated Amendment 1 for House Bill 5514. Representative Schutte, would you like to speak to your amendment?
I would, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, I'd like to say, contrary to what Ricky Bobby thinks, I think, being on the podium second and third through the finish line is an admirable accomplishment. So congratulations on that. And I've appreciated our discussion in committee today and previously on state elevator inspector shortages, and I understand the need to fill this gap. I'm supportive of the concept. I just want to make sure we're doing so in a way that is mindful of taxpayer dollars and resources. Appropriating $2.2 million for 5 FTEs as this budget proposal includes, that equates to around $440,000 per FTE. You can go on Glassdoor Google it, see the average wage for an elevator inspector is between $65,000 and $90,000 a year. And the city of Chicago, which is not notable for being a stingy government, pays their inspectors around $115,000. So while I understand there are other fees and associated expenditures with this appropriation, it's not all going towards wages. I do think we should bring the total more in line with market rates. My amendment to reduce this cost to $850,000. It brings the price per FTE in the ballpark of going pay for an elevator inspector, and still, frankly, allows for a generous amount of wiggle room. So urge the committee to accept my amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Schutte. A roll call vote is required on Representative Schutte's Amendment 1. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Skaggs.
No.
Representatives Brixey,
No.
Morse,
No.
Martis,
No.
McKinney,
No.
Schutte,
Yes.
Borton,
Yes.
and DeBoer. Chairman, you have 5 nays, 2 yeas. The amendment fails. 5 nays, 2 yeas.
Thanks. Representative Borton has amendment designated Amendment Number 2 to House Bill 5514H1. Representative Borton, would you like to speak to your amendment?
I would. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My amendment would strike $250,000 in one-time funding allocated to study the impact of required implicit bias training for health professionals on access to and delivery of healthcare services. $250,000 in addition to the resources already committed to the training is money that can be better spent elsewhere. In an inflationary environment with the expiration of significant one-time federal funding, every dollar counts. I move my amendment.
A roll call vote is required on Amendment Number 2. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Amendment number 2, Chair Skaggs.
No.
Representatives Brixey,
No.
Morse,
No.
Martis,
No.
McKinney,
No.
Schutte,
Yes.
Borton,
Yes.
and DeBoer. Mr. Chairman, you have 5 nays, 2 yeas. The amendment fails.
Seeing no further amendments, Rep. Brixey moves to report House substitute for HB 5514H1 out of the House subcommittee and refer it to the House Standing Committee on Appropriations with recommendation that it pass. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll for a vote?
The question of reporting the House substitute H1 for House Bill 5514 and reporting it to the House Standing Committee on Appropriations with recommendation that it pass. Chair Skaggs.
Yes.
Representatives Brixey,
Yes.
Morse,
Yes.
Martis,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Schutte,
No.
Borton,
No.
and DeBoer. Mr. Chairman, you have 5 yeas, 2 nays. The motion prevails.
Thank you. And with that, we have passed our 2 budgets. I want to thank all the members for their diligent attendance and questions and input and helping make this a seamless and I think successful process. Also want to thank my team, Emily and Ava, as well as Tom, who is no longer with us, but played a prominent role in moving this forward, as well as doing some of the work last word. And also want to, of course, thank Maya from the caucus, a trusted advisor on this process, and of course, so much of this could not be possible without the work of the House Fiscal Agency and Marcus, who I think is the best clerk that we have. Not that I know a whole bunch of those other clerks quite as close, and I see some eyebrows raised over here. It's a strong race, but I can tell you that that Mark's knowledge of this budget is extraordinary, and his ability to work with the money that we have in place, and his knowledge of past appropriations and past boilerplate language is extraordinary and extremely helpful in getting us to this position. I want to thank everyone who came in to testify before the committee, and those that that submitted testimony, including the State Bar Association, who just recently put in some testimony. So appreciate everyone who came in, spoke with members, spoke with myself to move this process forward. So as I learned last year, this is not the end of the process, but it is a strong beginning to the process, and I look forward to it continuing. But just again wanted to thank members for all of their work on this committee. And with that, there being no further business before the subcommittee, the subcommittee on LARA diffs is adjourned.